This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Unlock more streaming content online and keep your data safe. Encanto has quickly become one of the most popular Disney films in recent years. And as far as magic goes, Encanto probably has one of the most diverse sets of magical abilities that we've seen in any animated movie. Each member of the Madrigal family has a completely unique magical gift that they use to solve all sorts of problems. But the question is, which of these abilities is truly the most powerful, and which one doesn't quite live up to the magical hype? Today, we're breaking down all of these gifts to see how they rank in terms of power. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Encanto Magical Gifts, Weak to Powerful. For this list, we'll be ranking based on a few different factors. First, we'll be going by how we see the abilities utilized in the film. Second, we're going to rank based on how useful such a power would be in the real world. And finally, we're going to take into account how others with a similar gift have been shown to use it. Starting out at the bottom, with the weakest power, we have Abuela Alma. While she was the keeper of the miracle, she herself didn't display any actual power. At least, not in the same way that the other members of her family did.
We have a new gift!
Unlike Agustin and Felix, Abuela had the role of control in the family, being the one who was able to raise her children in safety and help the casita bestow gifts for them made her powerful in her own way. Abuela Alma had influence in the community, and it led to her family being beloved and successful. There are some people that have speculated that Abuela's family was the one that passed on the magical abilities and that she simply hadn't been aware of it until her husband's passing. But we have to argue against that. After all, if that had been the case, her own gifts would have been formed in a much more solid fashion. Abuela, while linked to the casita and able to communicate with it, wasn't able to foresee its destruction or stop the home from collapsing. That alone leads us to the conclusion that Abuela Alma is the weakest member of the Madrigal family. Second from the bottom, we have our protagonist, Mirabelle. There is a lot of debate about whether Mirabelle actually has a gift and what it could possibly be, as we covered in our Encanto Theories video. Still, Mirabelle ranks higher than Abuela due to what we saw throughout the film. Mirabelle shared a connection to the casita that none of her siblings or cousins had, with Mirabelle being the only one not cast out when the casita was collapsing around them. Despite not receiving a gift, there's no denying that Mirabelle was able to foresee the damage that would occur before it truly did. That doesn't confirm that Mirabelle has the ability to see into the future or that she has any sort of psychic ability, but it did prove to be useful in helping to keep the magic from disappearing completely. Not to mention the conclusion of the film where Mirabelle was able to restore the magic to the home even without the candle existing. We covered in our theory video that Mirabelle was assumed to be the new source of the miracle. While we can't confirm that and move her higher up on our list, we did want to state that the very possibility of it, and the evidence given, gives her a higher spot than her Abuela Alma. But before we get into our next entry, on the topic of magic, today's video sponsor, NordVPN, has the magical ability to unlock more cartoons, movies, and shows on your favorite streaming services. Well, maybe it's not magic, but it is great technology. If you're a fan of Wicked Binge, I'm sure you also watch a lot of Netflix, Disney+, and all sorts of other streaming content. But check this out. Did you know that all these streaming services have different libraries of available content for each country? That means there's stuff that's available in places like Japan, the UK, Germany, Brazil, and France that isn't available in the US, and vice versa. When I looked into this, I was actually amazed just how many series and movies were available in other countries but were region blocked here in the US. But you can get around this super easy with NordVPN. NordVPN allows you to change your server to another country so those shows instantly become available. And it's not just obscure stuff that gets blocked by these streaming sites. On US Netflix, you can't access shows like South Park, Rick and Morty, Family Guy, and Steven Universe, unless you use NordVPN to unlock it all in a couple seconds. NordVPN is incredibly simple. It's not complicated, and you don't have to be tech savvy to use it. It's also a great added security precaution to take to protect yourself from hackers on the internet. And you can use it on 6 devices per account. And here's the best part. NordVPN was cool enough to hook us up with a promo code for our audience. If you go to nordvpn.com/wickedbinge, you'll get yourself a 2-year plan plus 1 additional month with a huge discount. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. This is a limited time offer, so make sure to sign up as soon as possible. Thank you NordVPN for sponsoring us today, helping us unlock more streaming content online, and keeping our data safe. Now let's get back to the video. Moving on up, next we have the gossip-loving Dolores. Thanks to her super enhanced hearing, Dolores was always in the loop of whatever was happening around town, whether she intended to be or not. She was aware of Bruno still lingering in the house, and was able to pick up on Luisa's stress at the magic starting to fail.
And Luisa, I heard her eye twitching all night.
However, while Dolores was helpful in guiding Mirabelle in the right direction, we had to place Dolores as one of the weaker members of the family. After all, she hadn't utilized her power to do much without someone prompting. She had to be asked by Mirabelle outright if Dolores noticed anything with the magic. Abuela only used Dolores to see about Mariano's proposal. The only time we saw Dolores spread what she heard, without being asked, was after Dolores overheard that Mirabelle found Bruno's vision. Going by Mirabelle and Augustine's reactions at being caught, Dolores clearly had a fondness for spreading gossip. She could have really learned to use her gift to settle disputes or miscommunications between people in the community, picking up on patterns to the point where she may have been able to anticipate an oncoming problem. But instead, Dolores mostly just stuck with hearing whatever Abuela wanted her to. Next, we have Mirabelle's mother, Julieta. With Julieta, we see that she is able to heal anyone that comes to her by simply giving them some food she made. Broken bones, bee stings, cuts, and scrapes. It was a useful gift to have and cut down on the need for the isolated community to need medical supplies. In fact, all of the triplets have some ability that was meant to aid the people of the Encanto staying away from the rest of the world. However, Julieta's power did have limits. People of the Encanto were still able to lose their hair, gain weight, and age. It's easy to come to the conclusion that Julieta couldn't change anything that naturally occurred in the body. After all, as was pointed out in our theory video, Mirabelle herself does wear glasses. Our next spot goes to the supposed perfect granddaughter, Isabella. Yes, Isabella was able to create a lot of beautiful flowers by simply willing them into existence. However, we had to drop her down to one of the weaker members of the family, as we never really see her full potential. It wasn't until Isabella and Mirabelle had their fight that Isabella realized she was capable of making more than roses. If she had been allowed to explore creating more than pretty-looking flowers, Isabella could have helped with the crops or creating all new sources of food that wouldn't be possible in that region. Following, we have the shapeshifter Camilla. Much like Dolores, Camilla was criminally underutilized. When we saw Camillo using his powers, it was to replicate different people in order to fill in for them. Admittedly, we only really see Camillo use his powers to help a couple different times. Once when he was seen holding a woman's child in the beginning, and once again towards the end when he took on different forms to try and reach the candle before it went out. One impressive thing about Camillo was we see in the beginning that even when taking the form of a child, Camillo is able to have the same amount of strength when playfully tossing the baby in the air before catching it, showing his physical strength doesn't change when it takes on different forms. The change in appearance does give Camillo some advantage though, as we can see from how he switches back and forth when attempting to reach the candle. While we can surmise that his overall physical abilities doesn't change, he was able to use the new heights to his advantage while dodging obstacles. If Camilla was more interested in using his powers for more than babysitting or trying to sneak seconds of food, he would be quite a threat to anyone who dared storm the Encanto. Moving on, we have Antonio. Antonio was able to use his gift to help Mirabelle more than the other members of the family, which helped move him further up our list. Despite only having his gift to talk to animals for a short amount of time, Antonio got the hang of it very quickly.
I understand you.
He was able to communicate with the rats and use them to find Bruno and find out what Mirabelle was up to. We've seen in other media that having a connection to animals like Antonio does can lead to a character either not entirely knowing how to use their powers for their benefit, as with characters like Eliza Thornberry, or becoming a powerhouse and major threat, such as in James Cameron's Avatar. Given some time, Antonio could easily rise to be the latter option. In just a day's time, Antonio was far more in the loop than his siblings and managed to help Bruno and Mirabelle in a significant way. Taking the number 4 spot is Bruno. Bruno's gift to see the future came in handy, but he got a lot of pushback from everyone around him. Whenever Bruno would foresee something bad happening, everyone's response was that he was making it happen himself. Bruno had been in the unfortunate position of seeing the sense in preparing for the worst while residing in a village full of superstitious people. This definitely had an impact on how his gift developed, or didn't develop, as Bruno began to doubt himself and eventually gave up foreseeing anything.
Good luck. I wish I could have seen more.
There have been some people that ridiculed how Bruno goes about using his powers, stating that he shouldn't need to have a specific setup in order to use his ability. However, we want to make the argument that this proves Bruno is far stronger than he's assumed to be. Seeing into the future is impressive enough, but the fact that Bruno needed a wide space in order to let his power flow freely without worry showed just how much he had to keep contained. If Bruno was able to use his gift freely without ridicule from the community, he would likely have eventually mastered channeling his gift in a small space and without ritual. In the film, though, he needed the steps to create a sense of control, or else his own power would have been too much. Taking the bronze medal of most powerful gift goes to Julieta's middle daughter, Luisa. There was no doubt that Luisa was the most used of the family. Isabella would happily make flowers appear at random moments. Camilla and Dolores used their gifts when instructed, but mainly had fun with them. However, with Luisa, she was given far more work than the rest of the family because of her gift. Throughout the movie, we see Luisa maintaining her training to keep being the strong figure of the family, showing that while she was naturally given super strength, she also had her own power behind it. On top of that, Luisa was seen having excellent control over her strength and how much of it she used at a time. There are a lot of other strong characters in movies that could go overboard with how much force they used, such as with Superman or in Disney's Hercules. In Luisa's case, she was able to vary how much power she used as she jumped from task to task. One moment she would be carrying children, and the next she would hip check an entire house without demolishing the building itself. Considering how young Luisa was, and how much was demanded of her all the time, meaning she was working past the point of exhaustion, we have to rank her power this high on our list. The silver medal of most powerful gift has to go to the last of Alma's children, Pepa. Being able to control the weather around you is no small task. She was able to create wind, snow, hurricanes, anything that she wanted.
What do you want from me?
She could easily cover the entire Encanto with her gifts, or choose to keep it in a singular area. We even see in Mirabelle's song, introducing the family, that Pepa would often be sent to tend to the crops to be sure they got enough water, while the rest of the village enjoyed the perfect day. But much like with Bruno, her gifts were seen as an inconvenience unless she was asked to use them. For the majority of her time on screen, she is scolded and pushed into suppressing her powers, so they weren't a bother to anyone else around her. The only one that was seen encouraging her to truly process her emotions was her husband, with Felix seen trying to shield her from the snow she was creating in her fear. Like with her brother, we can't help but believe that Pepa would be formidable if she had been allowed to really explore her gift. Unfortunately, with a community and matriarch that only wanted clear skies, that probably wasn't going to happen. Finally, taking the gold medal of most powerful gift, we have Alma's late husband, Pedro. There may be some people confused about this ranking, but we have our reasoning for placing Pedro at the top of our list. It's widely accepted that Pedro had some form of magic that we never see him use directly. It would be far too much of a coincidence for the Encanto to form and the casita to come into existence right after Pedro's death, if he had nothing to do with it. Now, we can't exactly confirm that Pedro is the casita itself. However, Pedro was able to use his own ability to help get his friends and family to safety. Though he was killed in the conflict, his death resulted in a safe haven for the people that were fleeing the old village. If in fact Pedro is the casita, that only further proves how strong his magic was in order to continue existing. We also want to point out that Abuela was not shown to have any magical ability herself, but her 3 children were able to gain gifts when they came of age, with the casita only solidifying what sort of power they would get. For those that argue that powers came from the Encanto or the casita itself, we have to point out that Abuela and the rest of the village never really got any powers. Yes, Abuela was the keeper of the miracle, but from what she revealed of her past, no one in her family line had been shown to have powers before. It was also hinted through the use of yellow butterflies in the memory Abuela shared that Pedro was continuing to linger around the Encanto to help his family grow. When Mirabelle and Abuela finally had their heart-to-heart, we see the butterflies again in a flurry, showing he was still present in some form. Regardless of the details, Pedro was shown to have some sort of gift that helped his family, and being able to use one's magic even after death is an impressive feat that earned him our top ranking. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge some of our other Encanto videos, including our Good to Evil and our Theories video. But most importantly, stay wicked.